The year is 1861. The United States stands at a critical juncture, a moment that will define its future. The United States, a young nation barely a century old, is grappling with internal strife and division. The land of the free is anything but united. The country is teetering on the brink of collapse, with tensions running high and the very fabric of the nation being tested. The issue tearing it apart: slavery. This institution, deeply rooted in the Southern economy and way of life, has become the focal point of national discord. Southern states, economically dependent on enslaved labor, view any threat to slavery as a threat to their very existence. Their vast plantations and cotton fields are sustained by the toil of enslaved people. In stark contrast, the North's growing abolitionist movement, fueled by moral and economic arguments, calls for the end of this inhumane practice. The clash of ideologies is fierce and unrelenting. The election of Abraham Lincoln, a staunch opponent of slavery's expansion, ignited the simmering tensions. His victory is seen as a direct threat to the Southern way of life. 11 Southern states seceded from the Union, forming the Confederate States of America. This bold act of defiance is a declaration of their intent to preserve their way of life at all costs. This act of defiance set in motion one of the bloodiest conflicts in American history, the Civil War. The nation is plunged into a brutal and devastating war. Brother fought brother, father against son, as families and communities are torn apart. The war pits neighbor against neighbor in a conflict that seems to have no end. In a brutal conflict that would claim the lives of over 600,000 Americans, the cost of this war is staggering. The fields and towns of America are littered with the fallen. It was a war that would test the very soul of a nation and redefine its future. The Emancipation Proclamation, issued in the midst of this turmoil, would become a beacon of hope and a symbol of the nation's enduring struggle for freedom and equality. The American Civil War was a complex event with roots stretching back to the nation's founding. It was a culmination of decades of tension and conflict over various issues, but none more significant than the issue of slavery. Slavery was the central issue. The Southern economy was deeply intertwined with the institution of slavery, which provided the labor force necessary for the production of cash crops like cotton and tobacco. Southern states relied heavily on enslaved labor for their agricultural economy, particularly cotton production. This reliance created a stark economic and cultural divide between the North and the South. The North, experiencing an industrial revolution, increasingly viewed slavery as morally wrong and economically inefficient. The rise of factories and mechanized production in northern cities contrasted sharply with the agrarian lifestyle of the South. Political tensions escalated as both sides fought for control of Congress and the newly formed territories in the West. The question of whether new states admitted to the Union would be free or slave states became a contentious issue. The Compromise of 1850, meant to ease tensions, only delayed the inevitable. It included measures like the Fugitive Slave Act, which required citizens to assist in the capture of runaway slaves, further inflaming Northern opposition to slavery. The publication of Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin further inflamed anti-slavery sentiment in the North. The novel depicted the harsh realities of slavery and galvanized public opinion against the institution. The Dred Scott Supreme Court decision, denying citizenship to African Americans, deepened the divide. The ruling stated that African Americans could not be considered citizens and had no rights to sue in federal court, which outraged many in the North. Lincoln's election in 1860 proved to be the breaking point, leading to secession and ultimately, war. His anti-slavery stance was seen as a direct threat to the Southern way of life, prompting several Southern states to secede from the Union and form the Confederacy, setting the stage for the Civil War. The war began on April 12, 1861, with the Confederate attack on Fort Sumter in Charleston, South Carolina. This marked the beginning of a conflict that would reshape the nation and its future. The bombardment of the federal fort, and its subsequent surrender, ignited the nation. The news spread like wildfire, stirring emotions and rallying cries from both the North and the South. Both sides mobilized their armies. Men from all walks of life enlisted, driven by a sense of duty, honor, and the call to defend their respective ways of life. The initial enthusiasm was palpable, with parades and patriotic songs filling the air. The North had a larger population and more industrial capacity, giving it a strategic advantage. Factories churned out weapons, ammunition, and supplies at an unprecedented rate, ensuring that the Union forces were well equipped for the battles ahead. The South, however, had a strong military tradition and the advantage of fighting on familiar ground. Southern soldiers were often more accustomed to the rugged terrain and had a deep-seated resolve to protect their homeland from what they saw as Northern aggression. Early battles like the First Battle of Bull Run exposed the brutal realities of the war. The initial clash shattered any illusions of a quick and decisive conflict, revealing the harsh and bloody nature of the struggle. The conflict would drag on, far longer and bloodier than anyone anticipated. Trench warfare, prolonged sieges, and devastating losses became the norm, with both sides enduring unimaginable hardships. Key figures emerged. Abraham Lincoln, the determined president of the Union. His leadership and unwavering commitment to preserving the Union were crucial in navigating the nation through its darkest hours. Ulysses S. Grant, the tenacious Union general. Known for his relentless pursuit of victory and his strategic brilliance, Grant played a pivotal role in turning the tide of the war in favor of the Union. And Robert E. Lee, the brilliant Confederate commander. Lee's tactical genius and leadership earned him the respect of both his troops and his adversaries, making him one of the most iconic figures of the Civil War. The Battle of Shiloh in April 1862 was another significant and bloody confrontation. It underscored the ferocity and high stakes of the conflict, with both sides suffering heavy casualties. The war was far from over, and the nation braced itself for the long and arduous journey ahead. The year 1863 proved to be a turning point in the war. In July, the Battle of Gettysburg, a three-day bloodbath in Pennsylvania, shattered the Confederate Army's hopes of invading the North. Meanwhile, in the West, General Grant captured Vicksburg, Mississippi, giving the Union control of the Mississippi River. This victory effectively split the Confederacy in two. These Union victories, coupled with Lincoln's issuance of the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1, 1863, shifted the war's momentum. The proclamation declared slaves in Confederate-held territory to be free, making the abolition of slavery a central war aim. Section 5: The Confederacy crumbles, Sherman's March and the Fall of Richmond. By 1864, the tide of war had turned decisively in favor of the Union. General William Tecumseh Sherman's devastating march to the sea cut a swath of destruction through Georgia, crippling the Confederacy's infrastructure and morale. Grant's relentless campaign against Lee's army in Virginia pinned down Confederate forces. On April 9, 1865, at Appomattox Courthouse, Lee surrendered to Grant, effectively ending the war. Section 6: A Nation in Mourning, Lincoln's Assassination, and the End of the War. The nation erupted in celebration at the war's end, but it was a celebration cut short by tragedy. Just days after Lee's surrender, on April 14, 1865, President Lincoln was assassinated by John Wilkes Booth, a Confederate sympathizer. Lincoln's death plunged the nation into mourning. His leadership, compassion, and vision had guided the Union through its darkest hour. His assassination was a devastating blow, leaving a void in leadership at a crucial time. Section 7: Reconstruction and its Challenges. With the war over, the daunting task of rebuilding a shattered nation began. Reconstruction, as it was called, aimed to readmit the Southern states to the Union and integrate freed slaves into society. The period was marked by both progress and bitter resistance. The 13th Amendment abolished slavery, the 14th Amendment granted citizenship to African Americans, and the 15th Amendment gave black men the right to vote. However, these legal victories were often undermined by violence, intimidation, and discriminatory laws known as black codes. The Ku Klux Klan, a white supremacist terrorist group, emerged during this period, terrorizing African Americans and their white allies. Section 8: The Enduring Legacy of the Civil War. The American Civil War remains the deadliest conflict in American history. It left an indelible mark on the nation, shaping its identity, its laws, and its future. The war ended slavery, but the struggle for racial equality continued. The ideals of liberty and equality tested by fire emerged stronger. The Civil War also had a profound impact on the power of the federal government. It established the principle that states could not secede from the Union and reaffirmed the supremacy of the federal government. Section 9: Conclusion: A Nation Forged by Conflict. The American Civil War was a period of immense tragedy and profound transformation. It tested the nation's commitment to its founding ideals and ultimately led to a new birth of freedom. The war's legacy continues to resonate today, reminding us of the fragility of democracy, the importance of civil rights, and the enduring power of hope and resilience. The story of the Civil War is a reminder that the fight for a more perfect union is an ongoing process, one that requires vigilance, courage, and a commitment to justice for all.